Hi, I'm Donna Francavilla, and I like interviewing people who I find fascinating. As you know, I do a Where Are You From series. During the Where Are You From series, I ask people where they're from, and in the process, we find out who they are. Well, today's guest is someone who, as I said, is fascinating. You will be intrigued and you will learn a lot by listening to Tom Dooley. Tom, thanks for being here today. He wears many hats. He's an author. He's written several books. I'll hold them up. He's a scientist. And what else? You're an inventor and an entrepreneur. Wow, it's amazing he even has time to talk to me. Here's one of his books. It's based on faith, hope, and love.
Part of a trilogy, and the final book has been written as well, but it has not yet been published.
So I think I have to hold this backwards or something. I don't know, but hopefully it's coming out where you can see it. This is the Hope book, When Everything Seems Hopeless. Praying faith. I live by the faith of the Son of God. Half-truths are lies. But again, a fascinating man. And Tom Dooley has invented a new drug. We'll get into that and how it could change and completely alter the future of the opioid crisis in just a minute. But first, Tom, where are you from?
Well, I was raised on a row crop farm in Atchison, Kansas. That's in the northeastern section of Kansas on the Missouri River. Same town that Amelia Earhart was from, and also John Cameron Swayze of Timex watches way back in the 50s and 60s.
So how did growing up in Kansas affect or form you into the person you are today?
Well, I grew up on in a community called Good Intent, and Good Intent was it's a predominantly Roman Catholic community of German and Irish beer drinking Catholics. And as a result of being in that community, it had some similarities to stories you see about the Pennsylvania Amish, where if a farmer was down on his luck, he had an ailment, the community would come together and help farm their land for him. I witnessed that many times, so it earned the reputation as a place of good intentions. There's a Benedictine monastery in our town it's affiliated with Benedictine College, and the convent is named in part for my great-grandfather's sister, and she was the second leader of the convent in town. And so if you go to Ashland, Kansas, you can visit the Dooley Center, named for my ancestor's sister.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask you about is about your son. And the picture of your son is right here as a handsome young man. What happened to him, and how did that change the course of your life?
Well, 2 years ago, it was in the first week of February of 2017, my son overdosed from fentanyl, heroin, and tramadol, 3 opiates that he had taken. And he died in the basement of our house, and I discovered him seated in a chair, slumped over in a chair. And I had seen my son alive at midnight in the prior evening. He had woken me up. I heard him at the refrigerator, and he was there getting some ice cubes and making noise. And a lot of young adults do this. They interrupt the lives of their parents. And I went out to see him in the middle of the night. He had been rather ill for about a week. We had visited St. Vincent's Hospital. He was not doing well for that final week, and he had pneumonia. He just wasn't healthy, but he had become discouraged, and he relapsed from his prior opioid use problem. And so 2 days before I saw him, he had gone back to the street and had contacted his, drug community, and somebody hooked him up with fentanyl-laced heroin, and 2 days later he died. He died shortly after I saw him, and I saw him at midnight, and then I discovered him the next day when I was expecting to see him, I went looking for him and found him from an overdose in the basement. And that, in that year in 2017, it's relevant because of the opioid crisis. There were 72,000 deaths last year. So my son Thomas is the face of the opioid crisis of today. And I'll tell more about that story later.
All right. We're going to do this in segments. So if you are joining us live, check back. And if not, be sure and look on my news feed or go to the page, Where Are You From?, which is a Facebook page dedicated to just these interviews. Thanks for watching, and we will be back with more in a bit.